The Right Side Network, bringing you the right news for the new right. I'm Jim Hoel, and I am your voice. Thank you and good evening. Welcome to R.S.N's continuing coverage of President Trump's first ever address to the joint session of Congress. And wow, what an address that turned out to be, folks. That was really something. That was, to quote President Trump, the time for small thinking is over. The time for small thinking is indeed over. That was a phenomenal speech. That was by far Donald Trump's greatest speech in a time he needed it the most. By far. Better than any rally. Better than any speech he's given as a candidate or as up until now as president. It was extremely powerful, extremely moving. Probably the most moving since George W. Bush's 9/11 speech. It had that effect. It was powerful. It did have a unifying message. I think that he was successful in that aspect. He talked a lot about unity. He opened with a reference to Black History Month. He totally disavowed and totally addressed the anti-Semitic situations and acts that have gone on in the country over the course of the last month. He certainly addressed that issue and made clear that has to stop. I thought that he did a phenomenal job in that aspect, and I believe he did deliver a unifying message. It was extremely powerful and extremely unifying, as far as I'm concerned. Looking at CNN, wow, CNN's poll. This is CNN's poll, ladies and gentlemen. 78% of viewers reacted positively to President Trump's speech tonight. That is a poll from CNN. Fake news. Well, I don't know if that news is fake. That may be that's probably the most real news they've had on there since the start of the campaign. But 78% viewed that speech positively. Looks like Washington Post and the New York Times. Looks like they have begrudgingly written good reviews. The Washington Post, I think the other day their new slogan was "Democracy dies in darkness," I believe. So the Democracy Dies in Darkness people wrote a good review of President Trump's address to the joint session of Congress. So I don't know if that's how democracy is dying these days, but to each their own, I guess. Washington Post, okay. You're all a bunch of, boy, you guys have really lost it over there. But they wrote a good review of it, so even they must have, even they have some honesty left in their journalism. So this looks like this speech was universally well received. Certainly in this country especially, I think it did pretty much everything it set out to do. It certainly put the Democratic Party and the liberal mainstream media to shame. This speech showed that he is not some lunatic, that he is indeed capable of doing this job, that he can, in fact, be presidential. And tonight was by far the most presidential I've seen him, probably since since his inauguration. And it came at a time where he really needed it too. You know, with this whole Russian conspiracy theory that is on the liberal networks pretty much 24 hours a day. So it came at a time where this speech was needed the most. It shut down the majority of his critics. Like I said, you know, he came off as extremely presidential. He did what he set out to do. Getting into the meat of the speech, you know, from the very get-go, he set out talking about what keeping his campaign promises. That was certainly the theme throughout. Keeping his campaign promises was pretty much what this speech was driven off of. He got into Obamacare, and getting it, which we knew was coming. We knew that was going to be discussed tonight. And in getting into Obamacare, he made overtures towards the left. Pretty much, with statements like he still wants people to be able to stay on their parents' coverage till they're 26. Pre-existing conditions, certainly that aspect is going to remain. I mean, he wasn't going to change that. He wasn't going to throw millions of people off their health insurance. That would have been political suicide had he even considered that. So, I knew that was always going to remain. He pretty much echoed, his campaign promise that the poor of this country should not be dying on the street. And he kept to that. He pretty much kept to that tonight. That the poorest Americans should not be dying in the United States of America. So, in keeping with that, he did make overtures towards the Democrats as to, let's try to get something accomplished here. And certainly to the Republican Party. He made it clear that, they were going to do this his way. I know there are some Republicans who want to abolish the entire thing, which would be a disaster. That would be a disaster. That if that were to occur, the Republicans would be demolished come the next 2-year cycle. So he made clear that certain aspects of Obamacare will remain, and that they're going to fix it, and it's going to be fixed his way, and it's going to be fixed in a way that will be beneficial to every American. He addressed immigration. He made it very clear that this is going to happen, folks. The wall is going to be built. There will be a border wall. He's going to end. In fact, he already has. He's ending catch and release, which, by the way, is one of the most unbelievably irresponsible and horrible policies that was ever enacted. And for those of you who aren't really sure what catch and release is it is what it sounds like. An illegal immigrant is apprehended crossing the border or across the border, is captured. They do very little background. They pretty much get very little information, and they let him go. And he's released. And for all they know, this guy could be wanted for murder. They don't search. They don't detain them long enough to figure that out. So this catch and release policy is entirely irresponsible. You catch them and let them go, regardless of what crimes they've committed or what they're even wanted for. My uncle, my mom's brother, was murdered by an illegal immigrant. He was stabbed 16 times by someone who was deported not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now, how is that possible? How is that possible? You know, it's unbelievable how you have these. In fact, it was brought up. Kate Steinle was brought up, and Jamil Shaw was brought. You know, they had the parents of the victims there. These people that whose sons or daughters were murdered in cold blood by illegal immigrants who were deported multiple times. And how that is even allowed in this country is beyond me. And Donald Trump made it very clear tonight that that will no longer be tolerated in this country. And more power to him. You know, it needed to be said. It was also made very clear that the deportations will be expedited. They will be expedited for felons and criminals in custody. Which has to happen. I mean, you know, you can't have felons, felon illegals, sitting in the United States awaiting trial for years and years and appeals and all that. The deportation of felons will be expedited. There will be an end to sanctuary cities, which has to happen. There is no reason why local governments, municipality governments, should be allowed to hold authority over federal law. That's unheard of. In fact, it's the same aspect as having a federal 21 to drink law. That in fact, your local municipality could make it 18 to drink, or any age really. But the whole reason the federal law is 21 to drink alcohol is because they were threatened with federal defunding if they didn't put themselves in compliance with the law. Illinois was one of the last to do it. Illinois, my parents used to tell me this. Illinois used to be 18 to drink when Missouri was 21. So they used to go over to Illinois and buy the booze over there. Well, the federal government came in and said, okay, if you're not going to bring yourselves up to compliance, we're going to strip federal funding. This is the same aspect with sanctuary cities. It's either you become compliant with federal law or you lose the funding. So if, the mayor of Chicago or, the mayor of New York or, some mayor wants to try to act tough and hold strong on this and avoid an executive order putting an end to sanctuary cities, they can go ahead and try. They're not going to win. And in fact, it may not end well for them. So Donald Trump it pretty much made it very clear tonight that there will be an end to sanctuary cities in the United States, and this is all part of the United States simply enforcing its own immigration laws. For so long they've gone unenforced that I don't know why, but the idea of enforcing them has become some sort of horrible and outlandish idea. What if we like I was saying about the legal age to drink? Well, what if all of a sudden we just decided to stop enforcing the 21 to drink law? Just anyone, any age, anyone could just go in and buy booze. Well, I think you'd see that that would probably end really quick. But for so long, the idea of enforcing any immigration law has just gone totally ignored. That now, for some reason, it is considered to be racist or bigoted or you're some Nazi if you want to enforce immigration law in the United States. It's all it is enforcing already existing federal law. So I don't understand it. But Donald Trump made it very clear tonight that it will be enforced. And for those of us who have had relatives that have been killed by an illegal who should have never been in this country, especially those who had been deported multiple times, I think there's some justice to that. I certainly do. I'm sure my mother would. Enforcing federal law and deporting felons really should be a no-brainer. And and I'm not talking about there is a difference. Certainly those who have been in this country for years and I've never even committed a crime and I've just come over here to work and they pay their taxes and they should stay. And in fact that was even mentioned too. The Dreamers. Donald Trump tonight pretty much made it clear that the Dreamers are going to stay. And they should. I mean, I think that's, in all honesty, that's the right way to go about it. Kids, who came here with their parents when they were, young, and they weren't born here, but they came here. They should be allowed to stay, if they're already here. And, especially if they've been here a long time. And their parents should stay. And, if they don't have a criminal record and they don't, they're not gang members or cartel members or committing violence. Sure, if they're here to work, which is what the majority of them came here for anyway, they should be able to stay. There should be some sort of pathway to citizenship for them. And I think that, pretty much Donald Trump's immigration plan is, we're gonna deport the felons and the drug traffickers and the gang members, and we're gonna get rid of them. And if you have been in this country for a while and you're working and you're paying your taxes, then pay a small fine or pay your back taxes, and here's your green card. It makes sense, it makes sense to me. Yeah. And to be very clear, I knew from the very beginning of his campaign, Donald Trump was never going to deport 11 million people. I mean, let's be honest. It was never going to happen. The logistics of it would be he knew from the very beginning that was impossible to do. Just the sheer number of manpower, money, funding, bureaucracy, all of it. To deport 11 million people would just be, there's no way to do it. A realistic way to do it, anyway. And he knew that, and I knew that, and it was never going to happen. So, to those of his fans on the far right who are now fuming because they really thought he was going to somehow deport 11 million people from this country, I'm sorry, but it was never going to happen. What it was his that's how he does business. He negotiates from a position of strength. He starts off by saying, all right, I'm going to deport 11 million people. I'm going to deport them, and they all have to go back. The left freaks out, and they meet somewhere in the middle, which is what he pretty much successfully has done. He negotiated from a position of strength. A good negotiation is when both sides come away feeling like they got screwed. That's a good negotiation. So that's pretty much all he did. I knew that there was no way he was going to deport 11 million people. It would really disrupt a lot of it. Would disrupt agriculture. It would disrupt shipping. It would disrupt routine services in the United States. It was not going to happen. From the looks of it, around 2 million people will probably wind up over the course of his presidency being deported. The border wall will be built, and we will finally have an effective and smart and sound immigration system. And it's really far past due. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen how out of control it's gotten. It is a main reason the man got elected, was illegal immigration in this country became so out of control, and no one ever had any good proposals or any idea how to fix the problem. So Donald, came in talking tough until it finally came to a legitimate proposal, and one that it is supported by an overwhelming number of people, really. I believe somewhere around 70 to the latest poll, 70 to 75% of the American people favor the deportation of felons. They favor the wall. They favor enforcing immigration laws. So, pretty much, the way business will be conducted in the United States from now on is our immigration laws will be enforced. And it has to happen, folks. Like the entire campaign, said. The entire campaign was based on a country without borders is not a real country. And that's the truth. You cannot have a true country unless you have borders. Hillary Clinton wanted open borders. Some sort of one world hemisphere where I guess sovereignty ceases to exist, and nobody has a country. I guess I don't know really what the end game would be there, but that sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like a real nightmare, folks. So, a country without borders is not a true country, and we are going to have a country. The sovereignty of the United States will not be challenged. So, I thought that was an important aspect of his speech, and one that he dedicated a lot of time and thought to, I believe. He also talked about taxes. And one of the best parts of the speech really was he was talking about the Harley Davidson employees, and he was talking to executives of Harley Davidson, asking how sales are going, asking how they're going domestically and foreign sales, and they said sometimes times were tough. And Donald said to the Harley Davidson executives, well, about their employees, well, they're not asking for change, but I am. So, as far as taxing companies goes, and the United States tax code and all that, that's going to change, and that's going to bring back true prosperity to the economy. The corporate tax is going to be lowered, so our companies of the United States can compete with these international companies. The United States is currently having a hard time competing with China. We're having a hard time competing with the Asian markets as far as manufacturing and industry and manufacturing and the industrial side of things. We're having a hard time competing with them because their corporate tax is so low, that we're shipping all the jobs overseas. So, once that tax rate's lowered and once the reforms are made to bring these jobs back into the U.S., it's gonna create jobs. It's gonna create revenue. It's gonna get the economy booming again. And it's really going to be prosperous. And manufacturing will hopefully someday soon really take foot in America again. A lot of these plants that were closed hopefully will reopen, or at least, new ones will be built. We've seen it already through his presidency. Plants in Mexico being canceled. Instead, they're being built here again. Jobs are being saved. The Carrier air conditioning. Those jobs were saved. They were all going to be. They were all going to be shipped overseas. They were going to be shipped to Mexico. Ford was going to build that plant in Mexico. Carrier was going to build that plant in Mexico. If Hillary Clinton were elected, that certainly they would be gone. There would be no attempt made to save those jobs. And Donald Trump said, "No, you're not going to take. If you close these factories and you ship those jobs overseas, then I'm going to slap a tax when they get shipped back over, and they're going to be so expensive nobody's going to want to buy them. So you better keep those jobs here in America." And you know what? They stayed. They stayed. So you can't really underestimate the importance of that. I mean, just that fact alone, that these companies are willing to take a chance, and actually take a chance in America again. Not China or not Mexico or anywhere in Asia or South America. But companies are willing to take a chance in building in America again. And that's a big deal, folks. That's a big deal. It hasn't happened for a long time. And finally, we have a president that's willing to put these companies to task, but also negotiate with them, negotiate a tax rate, negotiate, loosening up restrictions, and which is a bit, and also regulations. Really, scaling back these regulations, which is an important part of what's keeping this going. That's an important part of what these companies are, why these companies are willing to take chances in America again. Donald Trump made it very clear tonight that these really unnecessary, overburdensome and really redundant regulations are going to be scaled back. They're going to be stripped. And, now the ones that are necessary, which there are some necessary ones, are going to stay. But the ones that are placing an undue burden on especially small businesses are going to go by the wayside. And that's a good thing. And that has to happen. It's smart. It's good business. And it's anti-globalist, which is excellent. Donald Trump made it no secret tonight that he is not a globalist. He's very anti-globalist, and that's probably the first anti-globalist president we've had since John F. Kennedy. Obviously, hopefully things turn out different this time, but I would say that that's probably the truth. He's probably the first, at least truly anti-globalist president since JFK. And to an extent, Ronald Reagan. However, with trade, Ronald Reagan was not, he did not make very good decisions on trade, as Donald pointed out. But, to get into some of the trade deals, the TPP is gone. Made that very clear. NAFTA is hopefully going to be renegotiated somewhere down the line. He made reference to Canada being willing to negotiate with that. But the bigger news was the TPP and the fact that that's gone, and that honestly that needed to go. The TPP was going to be a disaster. It wasn't even a partisan issue anymore. There was bipartisan hatred of the TPP. anything that's bipartisan today is rare. So for the TPP to be that dreaded by not only Republicans but Democrats is a major thing. Bernie Sanders was right about the TPP, as was Donald Trump. In fact, I have no earthly idea. Even the Democrats who weren't even really to the far left were looking at this thing and saying this is atrocious. Why on earth Obama was such in favor of it is beyond me. Other than probably the company, it was the same companies that probably funded his campaigns and wanted it, but Obama supported it. No one else did. And by the way, I know Hillary Clinton said that she changed her mind, but trust me, folks, if she were elected, she would have signed that shit so fast, probably in the middle of the night. That would have been one of the first things she signed. If she were elected, the TPP would have definitely signed it. There's no doubt in my mind. So the fact that Donald Trump put a stop to it is a good thing. The TPP, these trade deals. First of all, they're negotiated in secret. The ordinary, everyday Americans are not privy to the information that's in them. They contain very secretive and very vague language. In fact, part of the reason I think that so many Americans got on board against it was the fact that WikiLeaks, and don't we love WikiLeaks? But they released the outline of it that was at least completed at that point anyway, and every evaluation of it was horrible. It was a horrible trade. In fact, the TPP really didn't have anything to do with trade. From what I understand, it was mainly a bunch of legal jargon that made it legal for foreign entities to sue across international lines. So, for example, some company in China could potentially, if it were passed, sue some startup company in the United States. You'd have sovereign nations being able to sue across borders, and it would have been a nightmare for small businesses, for average Americans, for trade, even though it wasn't really that much to do with trade. It pretty much just made it legal it made more reasons legal for companies to be able to sue you. So the fact that the TPP was done away with was a great thing. It needed to go, and it's gone. And another great move by Donald Trump. Such a speech, really. Wow. I mean, we've gone through so much already, but this is why it was such a great speech. He talked about infrastructure. He talked about him wanting $1 trillion worth of infrastructure implemented over the next 10 years. That's something that he would work. He also made another overture towards the Democrats. Hey, let's work together on this. This country needs new infrastructure. It needs new tunnels and railways and airports and seaports and hospitals and schools. You name it, we need it. And pretty much, he wants to make that a bipartisan issue. He wants to make infrastructure a bipartisan issue. So more power to him as far as that goes as well. Something they can work together on. They even applauded that. So good for him. Infrastructure, he went on to talk about defense and defense spending, which is really the Republicans are, they were the only ones that stood for that one. But as long as it's spent wisely, I think that overall it could be a good thing. And the Ryan Owens that moment of the speech, wow. I mean, wow. That was very, very touching. Seeing the widow of of a fallen hero, and the way, they stood and applauded, and it was really touching. It was really touching. It was a special moment. I know some of the left is already, CNN, MSNBC are trying to spin it as propaganda, and shame on them. I think they're taking a very touching and moving moment and turning it political, and that's really that's really low. The Ryan Owens standing ovation was a very was probably the best moment of the entire speech. And to be honest with you, Democrats never looked worse with that whole thing. You have the widow of a fallen soldier, and all along the Democrats, the MSNBC, the liberal mainstream media, Democrats themselves, pretty much all said that, oh, this guy died in a worthless mission where nothing was accomplished, and no real intelligence was found, which is not true, by the way. General Mattis himself today said there was an abundance of intelligence gathered, and a mission that was not worthless did result in the casualty of Ryan Owens, and the fact that his widow was there tonight and was given a standing ovation was extremely appropriate and was very moving. And any Democrat or any pundit or any one of these liberal media organizations that want to try to politicize that, do that at your own peril, because that's atrocious. And yeah, you could add that to the list of things that you should be ashamed of with your fake news and your bias. But to try to turn that on Donald Trump is beyond any real sense of spirit and unity that he tried to create tonight. So if you're going to be partisan in that way, by all means go ahead. But the average American sees through that bullshit. But to me, I thought it was very moving, and it was a touching moment. And like I said, Democrats, they looked horrible tonight. Really, honest to God, the look on Nancy Pelosi looked like she wanted to vomit the entire evening. They certainly looked it looked to me like this was really the first moment that they realized that wow, this guy is president, and he does have quite a base, and we better be careful. Or in other words, as a party right now, they're screwed. I mean, they have been decimated. They're a shell of what they once were. In 8 short years. From 2008 to 2016, the Democrats are a shell of their former selves as a party. In fact, they had to deliver the response tonight. They had a former Kentucky governor, some guy I never even heard of. Steve, how do you spell it? Steve Seashear. The former governor of Kentucky that lost his governorship to a Republican, delivered the response tonight. Delivered the Democrat response to Donald Trump's first address to the joint session of Congress. Some guy that most Americans never even heard of. So that tells you how desperate and really how far gone the Democrat Party is. That they had some guy that I've never even heard of, and I'm pretty political, deliver the Democratic response. So, they got their work cut out for them. Oh Boy, do they. Because it's going to be a long 4 years, and it's going to be a longer 8 years if they keep this up. I'll tell you. I mean, they don't know what they're doing. I don't think they know exactly what. I think they regret who they named for chair of the DNC now. I think they wish that they gave it to someone younger and who had a better sense of the youth of this country. I think we're seeing more and more of the millennial generation become conservative and turn to the right. Especially now since the Republican Party was finally willing and able to reform itself and to get rid of these stupid social battles. These battles for the really meaningless battles over these social issues that have really cost the Republican Party elections. The gay issue, which is no longer an issue. That won't be an issue again in the Republican Party. I could pretty much guarantee it. Stuff like that. Now abortion is one that they will keep up the fight on, and they should, in my opinion. I think that there should be a moral voice on that side of things. But other social issues that just aren't important, I think it's high time, and they finally did, through Donald Trump's candidacy, reform the party on. And, the more and more they reform, the more youth they're going to get. And the younger generation, millennials such as myself, I have always been on the conservative side of things, but many others have not been awakened yet. They're starting to wake up. And the generation following ours, I think Generation Z. Recent statistics have shown that those 18, 19, 20-year-olds are more conservative than we even are. Now, millennials being a social justice warrior and sort of that kind of generation. Unfortunately, we weren't as awakened as we should have been when it comes to stuff like that. But times change, political trends change, and right now, politically things are trending towards Republicans. So the cycle has turned over. The paradigm shift has taken place. So, in a night where Donald Trump delivered probably the greatest speech he's ever given, at a time where he needed it the most, he did an outstanding job. And hopefully we see plenty more like this. This was really refreshing. It was refreshing to hear if you were just an ordinary American. Without really, hard political leanings. Just to hear, finally, some unity. And I think it proved tonight that he can indeed be very presidential. Donald Trump, he really did prove tonight, that he is fully capable of executing the duties and responsibilities of Commander-in-Chief. He proved tonight that he does plan on keeping his campaign promises. He proved tonight that pretty much he is true to himself. That nothing about him's really changed. He is who he said he was going to be. He is Donald Trump. He's the man that he's the same guy as he is when he announced he was running for president as he is right now. The political aspirations and the rigor of the campaign didn't change him. He proved tonight that he is capable of being president, and he once again proved that you do not underestimate Donald Trump. Time and time again, the man as president of the United States, the guy who the media has lied about and slandered and downright disrespected on a level that no president has ever seen before in our nation's history. And once again, he rose above it all. He rose above it all. And in tonight's speech, he delivered the biggest FU any man or woman could ever give to the political establishment. And he did it once again. And once again, he spoke the truth to the American people. And, he stood up there and he spoke the truth to them, and he didn't, not pandered to them or patronize them, but he spoke the truth to the American people. He showed Washington how they should have been doing business all along. Once again, the outsider who was never seriously considered a contender proved to America why he is our champion. Tonight, Donald Trump proved that he is indeed the champion of the forgotten, the champion of, the downtrodden, the guy that just wants to make a living and provide for his family. The champion of the everyday people. And that's the President of the United States. So, with that being said, I believe tonight we probably have seen one of the greatest speeches that any first-term president has given. Certainly the greatest, first inaugural address to a joint session of Congress that we've seen as far as I know in my history. So tonight, once again, Donald was Donald, and he did a phenomenal job. So we'll see where this goes from here. I know tomorrow we may have some more news on the immigration front. He may or may not be signing another executive travel ban. That is yet to be seen. But we'll see where we go from here. Overall, tonight, though, was a huge win for Donald Trump. A huge win for his presidency. And a huge win for the country itself. I think tonight was refreshing. So, for the Right Side Network, I'm Jim Hoel. Join us again tomorrow, another edition of the Hoel Report. Have a good night. May God bless you, and may God bless America.